good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the Catholic Prison Ministry Coalition Advocate Town Hall conversation on today. My name is Kimberly Limemore. I am on the steering committee for the CPMC, and we welcome you to our conversation on Medicare advocacy. As always, I will start off with a prayer. But as we're going forth, if you feel comfortable enough, please keep your cameras on, kind of to stay engaged, and put any questions in the chat so that we can definitely answer those at the end of our conversation. So again, thank you for joining us. We will start off with a prayer. I had a prayer for advocacy, and it comes from basically the foundation scripture on this is Proverbs 31, 8-9. And it says, speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. So in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Good and gracious God, we thank you for giving us the opportunity to join you in your kingdom work, serving those who are in need of basic things like food and water, education, and their livelihoods. Help us to be the voice of those imprisoned and in the detention system. Give us the courage to pursue your calling and give us the words we need to speak your truth. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So I would like to introduce our guest speaker facilitator for today, Sammy Perez. He leads Prison Fellowship's Grassroots program to build and mobilize a network of Christians who are passionate about justice that restores. Perez manages a team to equip justice advocates and justice ambassadors in the U.S. to raise awareness and improve the criminal justice system through digital advocacy, constituent lobbying, media engagement, and storytelling. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome to this morning or this afternoon, wherever you happen to be, Sammy Perez.
Well, thank you so much, Kim, for that warm introduction. And I just want to take a moment to thank each of you for taking time out of your schedules to join this call, whether you're with us here live today or watching this online. It is a privilege to be able to, as Kim read for us, to be able to speak up for injustices, to be able to utilize our voice within the space of advocacy and within the space of justice for individuals who oftentimes don't have a voice. So I just want to say thank you for taking some time to be with us today and to learn more about an opportunity to not only be able to use your voice, but also an issue that we believe is not only near and dear to our hearts at Prison Fellowship, but also near and dear to many of our communities that are impacted by crime and incarceration. So I'm going to take a moment here just to share my screen and introduce the topic for today. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about the Reentry Act, which actually you may have seen on the invite that it was formerly the Medicaid Reentry Act. So I just want to kind of give a note here that has been renamed. It was really in an attempt to ensure that we were able to gain bipartisan support. So we learned that sometimes when you use specific words that it can, turn some people off. And we really didn't want to introduce any, partisan politics into this conversation. We wanted to really drill down on what the issue was and the fact that this is an issue that impacts real people, and hopefully be able to sidestep a lot of the politics that, unfortunately, we oftentimes have to deal with within the political space. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Reentry Act, and want to first just kind of start out by sharing about sort of the problem. So what is it that we're trying to accomplish here with this specific bill? So as many of you know, right, Americans want to see the criminal justice system promotes safe and successful reentry for the 450,000 people who are released back into our society each year, right? So at Prison Fellowship, we are firm believers that when individuals who are being released from crime who are being released from prison and jail are able to succeed, that we all stand to benefit, right? So we want to continue not only as community members and as churches and as individuals who are working to support individuals who are being released from prison. We want to be able to step into that space, but we also want to ensure that the justice system is serving these individuals as well, and that the system is really creating a path for folks to be able to be successful upon reentry. So want to dig a little bit deeper into what the actual problem is. So we know that current and formerly incarcerated Americans experience challenges within mental and physical health, right? So I would say even for the healthiest of individuals, a person who has no sort of complications, that going through the reentry process is an extremely challenging period. If you exacerbate this process with mental health issues or physical issues, it makes it all the more challenging for folks to be able to be released after they pay their debt to society and really to be able to reach their full potential. So there was a few statistics here that I want to share with you all as it relates specifically to substance abuse, which is one of the key things that this bill would hopefully be able to help address. So currently there's over 50% of people in prisons and jails that actually suffer from a substance use disorder. And there was actually one study that showed that the death rate among former prisoners was 3.5 times higher than that of the general population. And within that same study, we actually learned that within the first 2 weeks after release, that the risk of overdose was 129 times higher than that of other state residents. So we know that not only is substance use is that is a significant challenge that a lot of individuals who are currently incarcerated kind of wrestle with, that during the period of reentry, that they are really exposed to greater levels of overdose, as well as just higher rates of death due to these challenges. So these are life-altering really implications, right? These things, if individuals are not able to gain the proper support that they need upon reentry, can really impact and change their life, right, in a negative way, which I think is something that we all want to be able to be a part of helping to avoid and really helping to address this problem. So I want to dig in a little bit more here as well to a specific policy that currently exists that's really sort of what's at the heart of what we're trying to address with this bill, and that's the Medicaid inmate exclusion policy. So this policy actually restricts access to Medicaid and other federal health insurance program for people who are in correctional environments. This delays access to health insurance during reentry, but it also restricts consistent access to quality services and treatment during and after incarceration. So not only is it presenting challenges for people who are reentering society, but it's also presenting challenges for people who are currently incarcerated and for their ability to be able to access the necessary health care resources, whether that's mental health, physical health, substance abuse treatment, while they're incarcerated, to really prepare them to return back to our communities and to be productive citizens. So I want to talk a little bit about what the response is, right? So we are asking for lawmakers to support the Reentry Act, which, as you can see from this list, is was co-sponsored and introduced by a large bipartisan group of lawmakers. So both senators and representatives from both sides of the aisle who have all come together and have worked to not only draft and introduce this bill, but also to co-sponsor it, to hopefully be able to show that this isn't a partisan issue, right? This is a people issue, and hopefully one that other lawmakers can get behind and support. This bill has also been endorsed by a large number of groups. As you can see, the Catholic Prison Ministry Coalition is here on this list, as well as some other groups that you all may be familiar with or may even be a part of. I'd also just like to point out the police support that we have. So the National Sheriff's Association and then the major counties Sheriff's Association as well. It is really encouraging to see other groups of stakeholders, such as police groups, to be able to join in this effort and really show kind of the broad level of support in such a common sense type of reform that hopefully we'll be able to get passed. So really exciting to see so many groups and lawmakers gathering together to support this very important bill. So I want to talk a little bit about what the Reentry Act would actually do. So this legislation would actually allow for states to restore Medicaid access to otherwise eligible incarcerated men and women 30 days prior to their release. So the hope is that before an individual is actually released, they can actually start to gain access to the healthcare that is needed and the services that are needed and are going to be critical to their ability to be able to re-enter society successfully, but also have access to medication, to have access to just mental health and physical health services in general, but also if there's higher level needs that they have, whether that be counseling or substance abuse service, to be able to start formulating a plan and gain access to those things as well. This bill also will allow more community-based health providers to be able to reach behind the walls and to go into prison and jails and to provide the services there. We believe this is really important because we don't want to wait until an individual has actually been released to society to then start offering them help, right? Just as someone personally who has experienced re-entry in my own life, I can tell you that in prison, time is very slow. Right. And you have a lot of time to think, a lot of time to plan. Once you get into society, things start to move 100 miles an hour. And it just feels like there's so many things that are coming, so many different responsibilities and things that as an individual, you're starting to rebuild your life that you have to take on and start being responsible for. We believe that being able to start this process before an individual is released and kind of experiences that very tumultuous time, that is critically important to the success of these men and women. So excited that this bill will actually open the door and allow for more access to those health providers while people are still incarcerated. So our ask is really that lawmakers would either co-sponsor and or support the Reentry Act. We believe by doing this that they will be able to help reduce cycles of crime and incarceration and recidivism, and also just simply better equip individuals who are returning home to our communities to be able to be successful upon their release. So I'd also like to just talk a little bit about why this even matters, right? So why should we as Christians even care about these issues? I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but we'll want to give a few points about why this is extremely important. So the first point, and I think the one that we believe is really the most significant, is really that of human dignity, right? So we all believe that every person, whether they're behind bars or not, but specifically even those who are behind bars, that they all have innate God-given dignity, that they have worth, and that they have value. So after these individuals have paid their debt to society like anyone else, they should be able to come home and to reach their full potential and have access to resources and things that are going to assist and aid them throughout that process. And we believe that through consistent health coverage, that these folks will really be able to be released and to do well, and that they'll have access to primary health care, that they'll have access to behavioral health and substance abuse treatment that's really needed to not only honor their human dignity and give them the support and services that they need, but also just to give them sort of a push in the right direction to be able to come home and begin to contribute to their families and also to our communities. The second point here is really just reentry success, right? So our communities thrive when individuals who are leaving from prison and jail are able to successfully find work, when they're able to care for their families, and when they're able to contribute to our neighborhood. So at a very basic level, we are all a part of this problem, right? While some of us on the call may or may not be directly either related to someone who has experienced incarceration and or ourselves been personally impacted or even know someone who's been impacted. Reality is that 95% of individuals who are currently incarcerated today will actually return home to our communities, and they'll be our neighbors. So we all sort of play a role in ensuring that these folks are able to come home, that they're able to be able to not only access healthcare services, but also to come home to a society that is welcoming and that is willing to allow them to be able to take advantage of their second chance, and so much more. And the last point here, which I think is super important, when we think about criminal justice, when we think about individuals who are incarcerated, and that stat of 95% of these people will actually return home to our communities, I think it's important to note that that's all across the spectrum. So whether that individual is low risk or high risk, whether they committed a low level crime or a serious violent crime, there's a good opportunity that a handful of those individuals are actually going to return back to our society. So when we think about how it is that we serve these individuals, how it is that we work to advocate to ensure that they have a smooth road back into society, it's truly a matter of public safety, right? We believe that, when we're able to help individuals avoid returning to a life of crime, that we'll see a decrease in victims, right? We'll see a decrease in new crimes being committed, and hopefully we'll see an overall more flourishing community. So we truly believe that, specifically as it relates to this bill, being able to grant men and women access to health care and other substance abuse related treatment services and things of that nature is really going to help to begin to pave the way, not only for them to be successful, but also to pave the way for our communities to be safer. So with that said, I know I just said a lot. I'd love to pause before I kind of dive into sort of what we can do, how we can really respond to this call, specifically related to this bill. But I'd love to just pause for a moment and see if anyone has any questions or comments related to the presentation.
Karen, go on.
Sammy, I'm going to ask this question rather than put it in the chat, because I've got a question about, in some of the, I'm in Texas now, and the issue is that we have one facility for them to get care at, and with the state being so large, many people in prison opt to not get health care because the fact that rather than drive in the back of a metal van for 6 hours, handcuffed, barefoot, and not allowed to stop for the restroom, they would rather, especially if you're ill.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through this. Is there any provisions or anything in there as far as for expanding, or is that going to have to be a separate bill to expand the existing care within the prisons? I just didn't know if there's going to be offshoots of Doctors Without Borders, or some way that when they initiated, they could other prisoners could access healthcare.
Yeah, Karen, I think that's a really important point that you bring up, which is there are oftentimes a lot of nuance as it relates to healthcare within prisons, like you said, accessing healthcare, or even it sounds like going to apply for healthcare requires this very long and kind of arduous sort of process of riding in the back of a paddy wagon. I don't know if they refer to those vehicles by that name these days, but so there's a lot of things I think to consider, specifically as it relates to this bill. I don't think there are any provisions, at least in the current form, that would help to address those things. So this is a federal bill, so it would really kind of address federal prison and incarceration and the healthcare services there. But we do think that would serve as a first step for hopefully for states to come back and not only to adopt something like this, if at a state level this is also an issue within the states that we live in, but also to take that further step, which I think is kind of what you're alluding to ensure that the implementation of these things, that there's no barriers there, because we do know that oftentimes we can work to create a policy that may sort of kind of at a very high level, we're just talking about giving people access to healthcare, but then there may be some other barriers below that in terms of people practically being able to access. How does the system work? How does the process work? Is it something that is actually even achievable for folks? So definitely would look to, if those things exist, to hopefully be able to take a second step. But believe that being able to pass this bill initially is the first part of that process.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. My mouse froze. It says, what are the opponents of the bill saying? Anything?
Yeah, so I personally haven't really heard a lot of sort of rational arguments in terms of why why this isn't something that we should pass. I mean, there's a couple of points in regards to when you think about Medicaid and who pays for that. Oftentimes you have just practically working with lawmakers and folks who are in power, who have the ability to change these types of things. You have an empathy barrier, right? So it's kind of like that lock them up and throw away the key type of mentality. So in terms of sort of the nuts and bolts of the bill, I don't think there's really been any things other than typically what we hear from folks who are opposed to normally to justice reform in general, as it relates to just empathizing with people who are in prison, being able to grant them access to healthcare and things like that. So, really nothing I would say of substance that has been something that we've had to kind of work through as we continue to meet with lawmakers on the bill.
I guess the other question I have, Sam, is given Congress moving at a snail's pace generally, and couple that with the fact that this is an election year, what's the likelihood of this getting passed?
Yeah, very real political dynamics, unfortunately. Just in general, like you mentioned, things on the Hill, it just takes a while to get these things moving and to be able to create momentum. I do know that, a bill with this level of support, as well as with the groups that are supporting it, hopefully stand a good chance of at least gaining some momentum. In terms of it being passed on election year, there's the political dynamics that we all have to sort of, unfortunately, go through during an election year, especially one like this that is really, really divided and just heated. So we're hopeful that we can continue to hopefully be able to gain more and more momentum. And maybe this is, something that could be added to a larger package. Typically at the federal level, that's kind of one of the vehicles that we have as compared to having a standalone bill. We could add this to something that we know typically is passed. So we're encouraged. I mean, we've seen even within recent years a lot of justice reform related measures that have been added to larger packages and that have been able to get passed and to offer folks relief. So while the mountain is large, we're hopeful that we can really get something done. And yes, I can grab the bill numbers and put them in the chat.
Yeah, we'd worked with Karen on the Restore Act, and what we heard back from congressional staff was, while they're sympathetic to that bill, costs were just kind of prohibitive. So are you hearing some of the same things with this?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at like the fiscal note in terms of what this type of legislation would cost. But one of the things we do know is that this isn't kind of a healthcare for all type of approach, right? This is something that individuals who would otherwise be eligible can apply for. So for at least from that perspective, in terms of cost, that's something that we can lean back on, that we're not just giving out healthcare to every single person, which obviously there's arguments for and against that. But we do know that for this specifically, that these are people who would already be eligible. So to deny them that, we think is definitely a conversation that we want to have.
Yeah, it's a hitting the ground running approach,
Right.
so to speak, than waiting, 6 months to kind of get in the system and do all the paperwork and all that stuff.
Yeah. And I think really when, one of the things I found to be most effective is, so what is that common ground, right? That we all stand on, which, at least for us is faith. We know when we're meeting with lawmakers, that may not necessarily be the case. One of the things that's common is just the idea that we all want to live in a safe neighborhood, right? And what we found is that lawmakers are typically a little more willing to be able to offer someone a second chance when we're talking about reentry, right? Once a person has paid their debt, we want them, like I think we can all agree that we want individuals who are returning home from jails and prisons to be successful, right? We don't want them to return back because that's not good for anyone. When you look at it from a fiscal standpoint, when you look at it from a community and family standpoint, and when you look at it from a public safety standpoint. So we found that to be really helpful to just kind of camp out there in terms of how we all stand to benefit. And then, kind of leaning on some other points that will hopefully be able to move folks a little bit closer to supporting the actual legislation.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. Excuse me. So, Sam, if you want to continue on with the next phase of your conversation.
Yeah. So what I say is thank you, Steve, for putting those up. I was trying to get to them. In terms of how can we get involved, right? So currently the bill is actually in the House Committee of Energy and Commerce. So that's it was introduced and it's been appointed to that committee, and that's where it kind of sits in terms of the process. But I would encourage folks that if you care about this issue, if you think this is important, to actually go and try to set up a meeting with your lawmaker and have a conversation with them about why they should support this, right? We at Prison Fellowship, we actually have a listening guide that we could provide to folks that can be helpful just in guiding that conversation. We actually use those with our volunteer justice ambassadors when they go out and conduct meetings on our behalf, and they're able to bring back information that we then can take and go back to the coalition with, and it's really able to help sort of advance their overall bill, and we found that to be really effective. So that's what I would say. If you have the time to be able to do that and to utilize your voice in that space, we kind of started out this call with the call from scripture to stand up and to use our voice, right? So I think there's no better opportunity than a bill like this that isn't really in the deep end, right? Hopefully the conversation doesn't get too complex and too nuanced, but could be something that you could actually be a part of and helping gain your elected official support. So we're happy to share that that listening guide out if that's helpful, and and be able to be a resource if there's any other ways we can assist folks.
Sammy, I did have one other question about the bill itself. I didn't know if there were any provisions, because one of the things you talked about was having access prior to release, right? And being able to start working on it while you were in prison, as opposed to being having all the noise around you once you exit. Are there any provisions in the bill as to who the onus is on in terms of whether the inmate themselves has to know about this, or will it be part of the release plan? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I have to go back and double check the bill specifically just to ensure that I give you an accurate answer. But one of the things I do know that the bill does, which I'm extremely encouraged by, is that it provides more opportunities for more community-based partners to have access, which, if the partners can't have access, I mean, then at that point, we know that there are no services that are taking place. But at a minimum, it's sort of opening that door. And I think that may even be sort of one of those implementation questions that Karen was getting at, which is, we can provide the opportunity for people to come in, but how do you practically facilitate that at an institutional level where people know that these things exist and things of that nature? So that's definitely something to look into, and I'd be more than happy to chat with folks on our end to see if that doesn't exist, if that's something that folks believe will be palatable to be able to add.
Okay, is there, you had another part that you wanted to go into though, right, Sammy?
No, that was just it. I
That
wanted
was
to
it?
provide that, yeah, that call to action to folks. I hope that was that was enough.
No,
Sorry
no,
if I ran a little short, but yeah, you
no
all
problem.
awesome, and you know, we're obviously thrilled to be able to continue to partner and appreciate everyone's just willingness to be in this space and to really be able to use our voices to advocate for justice. So thank you all.
Exactly. No problem. Catherine, I don't, if you're from the USCCB, if she had anything to add at this time?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, apologies. Have a little one with me today. Yeah, just thank you, Sammy. Thank you so much. And as always, it's a joy and a pleasure to be with you all for these advocacy town halls. Restorative justice matters so much to the bishops. And last fall we launched our National Catholic Mental Health Campaign. So mental health is just such an important issue in our time, and it matters very deeply to the bishops. And I just also wanted to know just kind of one general principle that bishops have also spoken often to is just the belief that everyone should have access to comprehensive, affordable healthcare, and of course that definitely matters in the reentry context. So just want to share that all with you. And in terms of our current advocacy, please hop onto our website, sign up for our action alerts, and you can get in your inbox our action alerts on current legislation.
Thank you, Catherine. And before we go to our announcements, I know we're a little early. Is there any additional questions that might have come up, even from Catherine's statement?
I was just going to ask, Sammy, while we've got you, can you give us an idea of the other things? I know, you prefaced what our court is like at this, our government is like, the Congress is like right now, but is there any other things that are rising in this area for prison fellowship that you're focusing on?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of the other sort of priority bills that we've been working on this session, the first has been the Federal Prison Oversight Act. So that is a bill that would create a position of an ombudsman and require folks to really to do more facility inspections for specifically for facilities that have been found to be high risk, and provides a whole sort of data reporting so that way that data comes back and there's accountability measures in place there. So we have really found that to be a bill that a lot of our constituents have been extremely interested in because it just provides that level of assurance for families who have loved ones who are incarcerated. I'm sure we all have heard of some of the horrific things that unfortunately take place in prison. So to have a way for not only individuals who are incarcerated, but also their staff to be able to report things that are happening, we believe is really a good step in the right direction. And that bill has gotten a lot of support as well. So we've been advocating for that. We've also been advocating for the Safer Supervision Act, which is a probation bill that will help to continue to streamline practices within the probation space and hopefully be able to continue to offer folks support, right? Once they're back into society and having to navigate all that comes with reentry. We know that probation oftentimes is a key component and unfortunately can lead to some folks going back to prison even without committing a new crime. So continuing to kind of work within that space and hopefully be able to provide people with more second chance opportunities and really reduce barriers, right? Rather than creating barriers for folks is key. So those are just a couple of the other bills. There's still the Equal Act. That's a bill that will reduce the disparity in how we punish crack and powder cocaine. I think I heard today that we're coming up on the 50-year anniversary of when that initial bill was passed for the quote unquote war on drugs. And, we know that is really that bill and those policies significantly contributed to the incarceration boom that we saw over the next, really 30 to really 50 years up until today, right? That we're still seeing and we're still experiencing today. So the Equal Act will help to reduce that disparity. It's currently, it started at 100 to 1. the Fair Sentencing Act got it down to 18 to 1, and now we're trying to reduce it to really 1 to 1, right? There shouldn't be a disparity. They're both crack and powder cocaine are they're essentially the exact same chemically, but we punish them differently. So really continuing to work within that space and hopefully being able to reduce that disparity. So yeah, still a few priorities that we've been working on, and obviously Second Chance Month is coming up in April, so looking to celebrate that in a number of different ways and raise awareness with our partners on just the importance of second chances and how we can continue to reduce the 44,000 barriers. I think it's almost 44,000. So we're getting a little bit lower than what we've been at. So those barriers are coming down, which is really good news for folks who are living with a criminal record.
Wow. I don't know if I've heard that stat before. 44,000.
Yeah, almost 44,000 documented legal barriers. So those are barriers to employment, housing, education, really all things that are very necessary for a person to be able to reach their full potential. And these are documented things. We're not talking about stigma, which we know is a totally, another barrier that people face, but these are things that are written, in law, right? That prohibit a person from being able to access a specific licensure or being able to really be able to kind of move forward. Housing we know is a challenge. So just a lot of barriers that really exacerbate the process of reentry. And not only that, the process of someone reaching their full potential, right? You have a lot of men and women who are returning home from prison that want to do well, right? They want to contribute, they want to be productive, but they oftentimes face significant barriers in that process. So really looking to break those down and to be able to help those folks reach their God-given potential.
Thank you.
That number is absolutely staggering.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely staggering. But thank you, Sammy, for all of your input, what you're doing on behalf of advocating for those that are incarcerated. I know they appreciate it, but we appreciate you sharing that information with us. You had something else, Karen?
Now, one more thing I wanted to ask, and this is kind of for Catherine and Sammy, as far as you're both federal focused, but since a lot of issues, coming from death penalty state by state, that affect the states. Is there any issues or bills that you see that we hope to address, like bail bond, things that are more on a state level versus the federal level? Just both of your work, is there other issues that you see?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hopeful bills?
Yeah. So we have a fairly large portfolio at Prison Fellowship. And when I say fairly large, is when you look at the size of our team, it's large. We would love to do, a lot more work in other states, but so currently we work in 6 target states, and then we also do work at a federal level. So Texas, Virginia, Tennessee, Ohio, and Michigan. Those are our target states that we focus on. And there's a wide range of issues that we're working on. So we have sort of 3 main bucket areas. So we advocate for proportional punishment, right? So really just saying that, we never would say that a person shouldn't be held accountable for a crime that they commit, but that accountability should be in proportion to the crime that was committed, right? So we know that sometimes in our criminal justice system that we see sentences that are way too short, but then we also see sentences that are way too long. So we really work to create some proportionality as it relates to sentencing. We also work on creating a constructive corrections culture, right? So creating access to programs, allowing people to serve their environment or their time in an environment that is both healthy and safe. And then Second Chances is kind of our last sort of larger bucket, where we do work on occupational licensing, we do work on housing, voting rights restoration. We also do work on pretrial reform. So in Michigan, we've actually been doing some work on pretrial to make that system more fair, which includes bail. And then we do work in policing as well. We actually were a part of passing a federal legislation that helped to create a national sort of training for police academies to be able to access and use. So yeah, I mean, we've seen success. We're actually knee deep in session here in Virginia. I've spent a lot of the last couple of weeks down in Richmond meeting with folks, and we have a couple bills that we've been working on, as well as in other states. We're working on housing, occupational licensing. We're doing some in-prison education in Oklahoma. I think Texas is obviously on a bye year or off year, but we'll look to ramp up our support in the state there as well. So yeah, a lot's going on. Catherine, anything from your end?
I think I'll defer to you on this just since my focus is, at the federal level, although the couple things I was going to say were actually Virginia. So that's where I'm located. I know the Catholic Conference here is working on some bills in that and in those areas. But yes, I defer to you, Sammy.
No, thank you. That's very helpful. There's lots to be done, and we're anxious for change. And you see these impediments when you're out doing the ministers do, and I know Steve, you do on your daily basis as far as so. Always looking for some hope.
Definitely. So if there's, excuse me, if there's nothing else, I can do the announcements, or if anybody has any one last comments, we do have time for that. So speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, just if anybody has any other thoughts or other topics that they would like for us to bring up, that would be helpful. We're always open for that, and we want to make sure, even if it's a particular area issue within states. And just coming to mind was one of those bail bonds has been something that we're hoping that Chicago has successfully passed it, been the first one to pass it, legislation to limit that. So we can feature that, and hopefully other states can model, will model, or we can petition to have that modeled in other states.
Again, we thank you for taking the time out. I thank again Sammy Perez for all his knowledge on prison reform and reentry, and we thank you that you are advocating for those who need advocating for. We thank Catherine for joining us and her son on today, and so we appreciate each and every one of you taking the time to join us for these sessions. Again, in the next week we will have another session, so please, I guess it's 2 weeks from today is our next town hall. So please plan on joining us for that. Again, continue to be blessed during this Lenten season, and we will see you next month.